Welcome to Golden Blue Dude, everybody, home of the college football fan. And don't forget, you can send gear to represent your team for the background of Golden Blue Dude forever. Just send gear to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. Let's get to the next video. Rumors, gossip, water cooler chatter, all that good stuff. If you're looking for that, you came to the right channel. I do mostly for entertainment purposes, but sometimes there's stuff that's actually happening that I like to report. And that's what this particular video is about, things that are actually happening. First things first, it has been announced, it has been confirmed, it is happening. Oklahoma and Texas will be leaving the Big 12 and joining the SEC July 1st, 2024. It's all been done, paperwork signed, it's happening. Now, for the Big 12, they did lose some money on this because they were wanting to get Oklahoma and Texas out sooner rather than later. I heard there for a while they were actually wanting to getting them out this year, but they would have taken a bigger hit. So, Texas and Oklahoma combined will pay out $100 million to leave the Big 12 in 2024. Now, had they waited until 2025, they would have had to pay $80 million apiece. So the Big 12 did lose around $60 million by allowing Oklahoma and Texas to move on to the SEC. I will say this, the fact that Brett Yormark was willing to eat $60 million to let Texas and Oklahoma leave early, that tells me that he is interested in the Big 12 expanding in the future and that he does have a plan and he knows what teams he's going to target or is already targeting. And we could hear an announcement of teams jumping from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 even in this offseason, because it wouldn't make sense otherwise why he would be willing to eat $60 million to let Texas and Oklahoma leave early. He is looking in the future, and Oklahoma and Texas are officially a part of the past for the Big 12. Here's the thing though. And by the way, shout out to Kuz's Corner. He did a great video on this as well. Y'all go check out his channel. And shout out to Locked on Wildcats. Both of those great YouTube channels. Go check them out. They did some videos on what I'm talking about right here. So go check them out if you get a chance. But what I was saying is Brett Yormark is turning out to be one of the best commissioners that the Big 12's had in a very long time. He is definitely a networker. He is out there making moves. The first thing is he got ahead of the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff has made a ton of bad decisions. We thought Swofford was bad over there at the Pac-12. Well, it looks like Kliavkoff is even worse. I thought it was a good hire. I really did. It looks like it's not a good hire. So his approach was he wanted to leave the doors open. He didn't want to try to lock something down sooner rather than later. And that has come back to bite him in the rear end. Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, he took the opposite approach. He wanted to lock down a TV deal as soon as possible for the Big 12. Now, it's not the best TV deal in the world, but for what we have in the Big 12, it's a good deal. So he locked in a TV deal for the Big 12. The Big 12 has Tier 1 rights with Fox, and then Tier 2 and Tier 3 rights with ESPN and some other providers. So he has a good deal, stability. The Big 12 is stable now, and the Big 12 is actually looking like it could be a destination for some teams. Now, I'm not talking about teams from the SEC or the Big Ten because the Big 12 can't compete with that money. But now it can be an attractive landing spots for teams out of the ACC if it dissolves, for teams out of the Pac-12 if they leave the Pac-12, which the Pac-12 is actually in trouble. I've heard a back and forth. I've been tugged this way, that way, all over the place. But from what I'm hearing from people that are inside the situation as far as the Pac-12 goes, things are actually not looking good. There for a minute, I actually thought the Pac-12 had a TV deal, and maybe they do. But from what I'm hearing now is that they don't have a TV deal. It's not looking good, and teams are still trying to leave the Pac-12. So the Big 12 is still in play as far as grabbing teams from the Pac-12. That's what Brett Yormark is trying to do. That was his whole mission whenever he set that TV deal down. He didn't get the best TV deal in the world, but he showed everybody, hey, the Big 12 is a stable conference. If your conference isn't looking good, come on over to the Big 12. We have a clause in this contract that if we add more Power 5 teams, then the revenue will be increased, guaranteed. So these teams know, hey, if the negotiations aren't going well or we don't like the TV deal that we're at, then the Big 12, they already have a TV deal and they have a clause that if we join, the revenue is going to go up. So they're not just adding to the pie as far as slices go, but they're adding to the pie when it comes to value. The Big 12 is becoming an attractive spot. Arizona fans, I'm hearing they're not happy all of a sudden. Last week, I was hearing it was Arizona State. Arizona State was not happy at how the negotiations were going between ESPN and the Pac-12. Now I'm hearing Arizona fans are also not happy, and it's having a trickle-down effect. The biggest argument that I'm hearing from Arizona fans is they want to be in the Premier League, the premier conference when it comes to basketball, and the Big 12 is the premier conference. They're fed up with these negotiations. They want to be in the best basketball conference. Arizona fans want to come to the Big 12. Losing USC and UCLA definitely hurt the Pac-12. Fox basically backed out of negotiations altogether. ESPN is trying to lowball the Pac-12. Really, the only thing that's keeping the Pac-12 together right now is that research money. Is that enough to keep teams from leaving the Pac-12? That is the biggest question. And on top of that, with playoff expansion, the Pac-12 is guaranteed a spot in the playoffs. The Pac-12 champion, even if it's only one team, they are guaranteed to make the playoffs whenever the playoffs expand to 12 teams. Is that put together enough to keep everybody in the Pac-12? Maybe a few, but not all. I think there will be more departures for the Pac-12. Now, on a side note, I did hear that the Pac-12 will announce very soon that all 10 teams sign their contract. This is a 90-year TV contract. And at first it sounds crazy, like I said last night in the live show, but a while back, the Big 12 teams did the same thing. A 99-year TV deal. It's the grant of rights that matter. But on top of that, if anyone leaves, they owe $100 million plus the grant of rights, will be 10 years, and they are adding SMU and San Diego State. The biggest question out of that information is how many teams actually sign the grant of rights. It's one thing to sign the TV deal, it's another to actually sign the grant of rights. Because remember, in the Big 12, Oklahoma and Texas, they signed that 99-year TV deal, and we see them leaving for the SEC early. So the question is, what teams actually sign the grant of rights? That's what matters as far as departures. The Pac-12 is adding San Diego State and SMU. That's happening. The question is this solidifying the Pac-12? Or is it showing us that they're expecting more teams to leave? I'm starting to believe that it's the latter. We've heard many times, I've done many videos on the four-corner teams, or I like to call them the three-fourths of the four-corner teams. Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, interested in the Big 12. I've been talking to Arizona fans, I've been talking to Arizona State fans, trying to get in contact with Utah and Colorado fans, but they're all saying the same thing. Yes, we are interested in the Big 12. It looks like that could happen. Now, they didn't say it will happen. It could happen. It just depends on this TV deal that the Pac-12 gets. And it looks like they're actually focusing on streaming. Now listen, I do think that streaming is the future of college football. I do think that streaming will be the main avenue that college football fans watch college football in the future. Problem is, that future isn't now. Right now, these conferences, they want linear cable. They want those linear cable deals, and the Pac-12 is not looking at a good linear cable deal. They can probably get a deal with ESPN, and maybe they already do have a deal with ESPN, but it's not going to be a good one. And it looks like they're trying to focus on like an Amazon account or an Amazon network, whatever you want to call it. And I don't think that's going to be a good avenue for the Pac-12 to get viewership. In fact, I think it would hurt the Pac-12. I don't even know that many people that watch TV on Amazon. On top of that, I heard that Amazon's presentation of the NFL was absolutely terrible. Not good at all. So if that's their reputation that they already have, then people are not going to be drawn to Amazon just to watch the Pac-12. It just doesn't make sense why the Pac-12 would focus on getting a TV deal or some type of deal, whatever you want to call it, with Amazon. It doesn't make sense to me. In the future, maybe once Amazon is established and streaming becomes mainstream and they clean up their presentation, because apparently the NFL presentation was terrible, that has to be cleaned up. In the future, maybe it's a great idea, but for now, it's not. George Kliavkoff approached this directly the opposite of what you should have approached this. He should have tried to lock down a TV deal sooner rather than later. He should have tried to beat the Big 12 in a TV deal. Then that would have put the Big 12 in a bad spot. But what happened? No, I'm keeping the doors open. I'm listening to everybody. The problem is, not everybody was interested. In fact, Fox was like, no, we're good with the Big 10 and we're good with the Big 12. We're not bidding on the Pac-12 at all. So they pulled out of the Pac-12. And so Fox is not even bidding on the Pac-12. They are relying totally on ESPN for a linear cable TV deal, and it's not going to be a good one. Is it enough to keep the Pac-12 intact as far as not losing some big-time brands? I don't think so. And I'm not saying it's going to happen now or next year, but I think in the next 5 years at least, we will see a mass exodus out of the Pac-12. Some will go to the Big 12. Some could go elsewhere. I know a lot of people think that it's Oregon and Washington to the Big 10, and I think that could still happen. But I'm also hearing rumors about another conference, and I'll do a separate video on that. And that rumor is definitely heating up. But for now, Oklahoma and Texas are headed to the SEC July 1st, 2024. The Big 12 will receive $100 million. The 8 legacy teams, West Virginia, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, they each will receive $12.5 million, which is their cut of that $100 million buyout. The 4 teams coming in, Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, BYU, will not see a penny of that. By the way, West Virginia being one of the teams receiving that $12.5 million part of that share of the buyout. Let's see, Neil Brown's buyout now is $13 million. We're getting $12.5 million. All we would have to make up is $500,000. All I'm saying is hopefully West Virginia spends that money wisely. Now the money excuse is out the window as far as keeping Neil Brown as the head coach. And on top of that, in their first year in the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma will not get full revenue share. Still more than what they would make in the Big 12, but they're not making full revenue share. I'm not sure about year 2. Maybe it kicks up to full revenue share, but I do know in year 1, it's not going to be full revenue share. Y'all know in the comments section, number 1, do you think this was the right decision by the Big 12 to take a $60 million cut just to let Oklahoma and Texas leave early? Number 2, do you think the Pac-12 is in trouble because the Big 12 locked in their TV deal first, and now the Pac-12 is just left with scraps? Number 3, where do you think the ultimate landing spots for some of these Pac-12 teams will be? Whether it's Oregon, Washington, Cal, Stanford, or the 3/4 of the 4 corners. Where do you think they're going to go? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.